I am Rich Campos, and I am your host. I am the CEO and founder of Passplot, the data assistant in your pocket. I am so very pleased to take Stephen Weller here with us today. We have some very special announcements for you. And we're also looking forward to giving you some great pearls for you to take home with you today. Stephen, if you don't mind just advancing to the next slide. Awesome. So we have a 20-minute presentation with Stephen Weller, and after that we will have about 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A. Please post your questions in the chat. I'll be monitoring those, and then we'll give them to Stephen to help answer them. If any questions are not covered today, no worries. We are recording a session, and we'll also have contents delivered to your email that you registered with for this event. We'll give you our contact information, the content, and the recording. You have it all. Stephen, if you could take the next slide. Thank you. So the objectives for today is there's a big announcement about the Progressive Hospital, Lean Hope, Stephen's latest venture in writing. We also he will be sharing with you 2 great insights of what it's like to be a lean practitioner and developer within the healthcare space. Is going to give you 2 wonderful takeaways today. If you move forward, Stephen. All right, as a way of introducing our speaker, I'm not going to read this, obviously, because I know you've already read it. I'm going to tell you instead a story about how I met Stephen back in 2009. I was just starting my career in healthcare profession. I was working in Mahwah, New Jersey, at the global headquarters of Stryker Orthopedics. And in my regulatory function, the very first question that I asked was, hey, who in the building knows about lean in healthcare? And everybody said the word Weller. And so as it goes, they would say, if you want to get better, you go see Weller. And so I did. I walked across from the regulatory side of the house over into manufacturing in the same building. It was only a few hundred feet. And there he was. I introduced myself, we talked, and Stephen said, hey, Rich, I'm putting together this great package, this very large program that he was putting together on lean application in manufacturing and eventually would become healthcare. And he said, what do you think about this slide? And Stephen gave me a single slide. It was only a single slide to look at. And he blew me away because what it was 250 years of history of lean all the way from the Civil War in the United States until the end of the 20th century. Not only in the United States, but he also gave Japanese history too, because those obviously intersected into the Toyota production system. I was mesmerized by this one slide. I said, if a gentleman like that can put a slide like that together and mesmerized me, I said, this is the guy to go to, no doubt about it. Well, that one slide became the foundation for Stephen's first book, which is called The Progressive Machine, which is now in its 2nd edition. And in the remaining 12 years since, Stephen has spent all of his passion and his love in the healthcare space. And he has written a new book called The Progressive Hospital. So I'm super excited to have you, Stephen. Please take it away.
Thank you, Rich. The Progressive Hospital, yes, this book is about to go to print and will be available for pre-order here it's already available for pre-order with Warren Publishing. And one of the things that I did when I was writing this book, obviously having the years of experience working in the surgical space, because that's what I decided to specialize the last 12 years on, is the lean application within the surgical space. But I didn't want to write a textbook because much of my experience wasn't about that people understand the numbers or anything like that. It was about the things such as relationships, the different challenges that everybody's in, and the environmental factors. So I decided to just write a book from a fiction perspective that just tells a story. And I think a lot of us, when we read books such as like The Goal, we just really remember such things as the stories within that, such as who does not understand the story about Herbie after reading The Goal. And so I kind of want to do this for the healthcare space. And so not be talking to you and say, this is surgical optimization, this is how you get to do it, but rather this is what it's like within the surgical space. And my real goal was to help show that love for the caregivers and what these wonderful people do for us each and every day, and just how talented they really are. And so why did we choose the Progressive title? And it's very simple. It's basically, it's a management approach that strives to benefit all stakeholders through alignment. And right now, one of the modern forms of progressive management, for example, is something that we've come to know as lean management. And so that's why we have a lean hope within the book. So let's just talk about the surgical space. When Rich and I first got together, we were talking about, how do we understand the importance of the operating room within the hospital? And it's just like, well, think about your circulatory system. If you have an erratic heartbeat, you probably are not going to be very healthy. But if you have a very good heart rate, a healthy heart rate, then your circulatory system is going to be probably pretty good. And that's kind of the same thing over here is what is our circulatory system within healthcare, especially within a hospital. And oftentimes that operating room is the heart, so to speak. And again, it's especially when we're talking about the continuum of care for surgery. And so what makes up the circulatory system? Well, it's the flow of the patients, the flow of the caregivers, instruments, supplies, and information. And there's actually more. I mean, there's like specimens and stuff like that. But really what we want to try to do is optimize this. And that's really what the book focuses on here. And the story that we're going to be talking today, that we're going to share, is the importance of going to the operating room, going and seeing things from the patient's perspective. So we're going to talk a little bit about supplies. And so when we're saying going to the actual place, we're talking about going to the gemba, the real place where it happens. And so that's what the next few slides are going to be all about. And that's one of the things that Rich did is he created Passplot as a way to be able to keep us at the gemba and get some numbers out of it. Now, what is it that we want to try to do? Well, we want to try to simplify. And in the book, there's a quote, this is, I don't believe in magic. And oftentimes they say there's no magic pill, there's no magic pill. But I do believe in simplicity. And that is going to go into what we're talking about here. This is actually not something new. Frank Gilbreth, when he's known as the father of the motion study, is a guy who went into the operating room in the early 20th century, and he went in there expecting to see, an optimized performance. And he was surprised to see it was quite the opposite. Was that the end of it? No. In 1944, there's an article written by Dr. McCarty who recognizes the similar thing. In fact, if you read that article, despite the little differences in technology, the environment of the hospital in terms of that culture is still there. And he points out the importance of simplicity by saying that we should have few instruments and just only have in there what we use regularly. 1957, another article came out and talked about standardization. And a lot of times we get into this role of all or nothing. We're all going to go to this one vendor. We're going to do the same thing. And then that doesn't work. And so then we go to the other end, where we're not going to standardize anything. And what this article here points out is the importance of partial standardization. And so this is just a little cartoon that was developed that just talks about the importance of all or nothing, why that can be what we call foolish standardization. It's just saying, well, I can't find my pen in this trash, in their drawer because they have everything in there that they don't need. They said, well, get rid of the stuff you don't need. So he just throws everything out. He said, well, now you throw away your pen. So he throws everything back in, and we keep going back and forth. Well, we're talking about going to the gemba. We're talking about these optimization initiatives. The point is what we're trying to do is what's going to help us get to the next step. And that partial standardization, as we're trying to pursue perfection, is a way to get there. And this is a very simple example of some of the things that impacts the operating room a lot. And Rich and I have actually got a lot of experience looking at many different hospitals on their preference cards. Now, surgical preference cards are instructions for the surgical team for surgery. And one of the most prominent features is the pick list. What are we pulling in for surgery? And many times there's many people who assume that a particular surgery is going to pull the exact same things for every surgeon. But what we end up finding is that's not exactly the case. And so we could have, I've seen as much as a one surgeon doing the same surgery as another surgeon pull 50% more items. 50% more items than this surgeon. What does that mean? That means the caregivers supporting this surgery have to handle 50% more items. And that is to set up, to tear down, and everything that goes with it, which correlates to time. And we've had situations in which we've had as much as a 99% correlation to the number of items pulled for surgery to the room efficiency. The graph on your right talks about the complexities. Only maybe 10% to 12% of the items picked for a procedure for all the surgeons are on all the cards. And as much as 50%, if you look at all the cards and all the individual line items, as much as 50% are only on one card. In other words, you're only going to find that item on one card. Imagine the exceptions the staff has to make to support that surgeon and what that does to contribute to time. And so on the graph on your left, you see, okay, the need for simplicity. And the graph to the right is the need for standardization or partial standardization, or let's just say meaningful standardization. These graphs are also been powered by Passplot. Why we bring this when we mention Passplot? Passplot takes the Excel factor out. In other words, we can go on site at the Gemba, input the data on our phone, and get these results so that we can communicate to a broader audience. And we have many wonderful authors out there that talk about such things as the invisible Gemba and communication. And Rich is out there trying to help bridge that gap, give us something timely. So let's talk about the next piece over here is being able to see with our own eyes. And we're going to be talking about information flow. In this book, it said sometimes we start chasing after a single metric and we forget the intent of that metric. We start looking at things from only one point of view. And I said, well, why are we doing this? And I was working with a collections team one time, and they're the ones that get your money when they meet with the patient right before the surgery, and they go through some things, and one of the things that they do is collect money. And we asked them and said, okay, what is your goal? And I got every answer, and it was like, well, actually, it's to collect money. And I said, okay, now what's all involved? And then they start making all the connections to patient experience and stuff like that. We don't chase after a single metric without understanding the impact, how we manage the expectations. And so this metric over here is like, don't foolishly go after one metric. We got to understand, why do we have that metric in place? And so when we're talking about learning to see, this is an example of a motion map within a surgery. Rich and I, we've been in quite a few, and my very first time we ever start, really kind of looking at the surgery, we started doing these motion maps and started seeing traffic patterns. We weren't trying to go into detail of what they were doing. We just wanted to see the traffic patterns, and you can do this on your tablet. Well, we started looking at this and say, what is a way for us to start understanding what we're seeing? And we said, okay, well, we come from manufacturing. We are familiar with concepts of clean rooms and the importance of not leaving the room constantly. Otherwise, you're going to disrupt the air pressure. Well, we're thinking about, well, that would apply to the operating room. And so what Rich and I were able to start looking at is like, well, let's ask ourselves the question, why are we leaving the room so much? And then the second question is, why do we have so many people in the room? And that's what this motion map allowed us to do. And from there, create a grid to be able to say, if we have high amount of traffic going in and out during the surgery, we can disrupt the pressure and everything, air pressure, and create many different risks. It also creates a lot of efficiency issues. And we have a high number of people, then we're in this red zone. And our goal is to get to the green zone over here, where we have only what we need and minimize the traffic. So Rich, I have to hand it to Rich. Rich came up with this great idea. It says, well, okay, it's not just important to see how many times did we leave, but when did it occur? And this is a distribution of the door openings at the surgery. And what we could find is that that door could open as many as 14 times. That's this 1.4. This 1.4 is a 10-minute interval, which means that door opened in 14 times in that 10-minute period. Well, what was going on over there? Well, again, this tool is a great way for us to discuss, while it's still fresh in everyone's mind, what was going on. And what do we want to do? Obviously, we want to figure out why did we open the door, and then what can we do about it to get it over here, as opposed to say, everyone stop moving in and out. And so we began that plan, do, check, act process. This is an approach that working with Rich is saying, hey guys, we got to understand what's going on. What are the sources of variation? What is causing the situation? What can we do about it? And how do we make sure that this works? These are things that we do on a regular basis. And so what I want to leave here with just a quick summary before we get into the Q&A is that Taiichi Ono has this wonderful quote. It says, people who can't understand numbers are useless. Notice that the visuals that we put out there is a representation of motion, but we put numbers to it. The gemba, or the actual place, where numbers are not visible, is also bad. We should be able to go out anytime and be able to know, are we ahead, are we behind, what's the status? However, people who only look at the numbers are the worst of all, he said. How many times have we been in a situation in which we're outside the gemba, we're looking at just a red-green chart and just give a direction, go after the red, and not understand how this is connected to the other pieces. And again, there's many people who talk about this that could go in depth, but when I look at healthcare, these are some of my personal experiences that I've seen, well-meaning people, but said that we can't just look at the numbers. We got to understand what's going on, go to the gemba. So some of the key takeaways here is that we want to align our flow paths. We want to create a circulatory system with a steady heartbeat. We want to go see with our own eyes, and we want to use meaningful metrics and technology such as this that Rich has helped to develop, and several of you have been involved in, have introduced technology that really embraces that thinking, is helping us to do that, and it's helping us with that communication process. And then finally, we want to have meaningful simplification and meaningful standardization. So that's a quick summary of some of the details within the book around from the technical perspectives. But I'm personally a little bit more excited about when people who have read the book in the past, they get into the education thriller aspects, because there is a whodunit aspect and quite a bit, and it was set up to kind of just show exactly what our caregivers do for us each and every day. And I have a lot more fun talking about that as well. So that is a summary for me. So Rich, go ahead.
Stephen, thank you so much. I'm going to ask the folks here to do something cool. We're going to try to give you a silent clap in the shape of a heart. How's that? Can we do that? Let's go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Like that. Okay. So thank you so much. Stephen, I'm going to go ahead, guys. I'm going to open up the chat for you. If you'd like to just drop some questions, I'll start to provide them to Stephen. I'll kick things off here with you, Stephen, is one of the characters. So the book is in the situation of the book is that there's a hospital in the middle of a pandemic, and at the same time there's a lean transformation going on, and which is very, very interesting sort of combination of things, which surely is going on in the world today. So there was one character in the book named Kate, who was very central to the transformation. She was essentially the leader, the coach, the transformation coach. And I was wondering if you can talk about Kate from the book, what her role is, and how did you think of her? And what kind of elements are there to help Kate be successful within that role?
So Kate came about, I went to go visit my son. We were driving back, and it was about an 8-hour drive. And I was talking to my wife about the concept of this book. This is right when COVID was at its beginning. It hadn't really hit yet. We didn't really understand what was going on at that time. And I said, I want to write this book. I want to write it as a fiction, as a story, but I really want a very strong character. And I didn't want a consultant to save the day. So Kate is the representation of some of the best leadership attributes of the leaders I got to work with in the past, what they brought to the table. And so she's the surgical services director, and she is guiding the main character. His name is Tim, and who's a data analyst in the world of surgical optimization. And so that is Kay, and she has these amazing strengths, but she also has her flaws, and we get to learn more about her. And I've been very happy with how people have responded to the character of Kate. She's a very strong person, and definitely very happy with this character. But she's definitely the pinnacle of driving change in this entire book.
And the great thing is that she is within a hospital system, right? And she's being empowered to lead that transformation forward. I think that's an important. If you can comment on that as well, as part of the overall culture and of empowerment towards helping the lean to really take root and then expand within the hospital system.
Yes, actually, this wasn't actually planned. I always have these books over here. This is the 1913 edition of Frederick Taylor's Scientific Management. And there was a quote he said in here on page 6 that really kind of inspired why make it someone from within. And he talks about on page 6 that he has this paragraph. He says, "What we are all looking for, however, is the ready-made, competent man or person, the man whom someone else has trained. It's only when we fully realize that our duty as well as our opportunity lies in systematically cooperating to train and make this competent man instead of in hunting for a man whom someone else has trained that we shall be on the road to national efficiency." She's basically the person who came from within. And so this is, and to me, that was a quote that really inspired why her position was important and why she's the surgical services director and not, say, like an outside consultant or an outside mentor.
Folks, feel free to continue to drop in the any questions that you may have here for Stephen. We'll make sure that he's able to answer your questions. Having read the book, I think it was a fascinating story of your last 12 years in healthcare. A lot of the things that you wrote about chapter to chapter, I related to immediately because I was with you in some of those journeys, and all the little anecdotals of what it's like to be inside of a hospital in a stressful situation, which is it's already a very dynamic situation. But I think on top of that, having a pandemic on top, a lot of folks out there may be curious, like, what is it like? Your book certainly, paints the colors of what that is. But yet, despite all the stress that's in the framework of your book, there are a lot of little interesting areas, like you mentioned. There was one character there, and I'm sorry I don't recall his name, but it was about really going down to the folks who work every day. And I think this gentleman was in the sterilization area of the hospital. And this guy had the answers basically from his experience. He just never had an opportunity to express it and to work with people to develop a solution. So I wonder if you could talk about that. It's like, how do we get to get people who are working day to day to get that opportunity to really for them to provide beautiful ideas and suggestions for how to improve healthcare and have them participate and then eventually become leaders in the field, right, within the hospital in terms of moving the wheel forward. So.
One of the central themes about this book is the role of mentorship. And what does mentorship really mean? And in mentorship works well when the mentor chooses the mentee and the mentee chooses the mentor. And there's so much more that can happen when you have this kind of relationship. And that's what exactly happened over here. So there is a friend to the main character, Kay, who comes in. And he works in manufacturing because we wanted to show that there was a connection to manufacturing here. And he worked in manufacturing and he was brought into the sterilization process. And what I was trying to point out there is those who are interested in lean and have experience in manufacturing see a lot of similarities to how we do our work in sterilization process. And so it's an easier conversion versus just going right into patient flow, because this is talking about the instrument flow, the cleaning process. But here, this main character was able to observe and bring to the table things that his experience was able to show. And he did it in a very subtle way. And I think what you're referring to is that he accurately predict that they were going to drop these trays, these instrument trays. And what they asked is, when it did happen, it says, how did you know? He said, well, you didn't design it not to drop. And these are some of the wonderful perspectives that when he said that, it just brings everybody together. And that's actually based off of things that really happened. It's just sometimes we've got these wonderful, amazing, intelligent people, and sometimes we just need that different perspective. All right, how do we design it to succeed? And so that was something that he was able to do, and went into doing some instrument tray simplification and standardization. And with that came a tech that was empowered to simplify the trays. This surgical scrub tech, the person that helps hand the instruments off to the surgeon during surgery, decided to partner with the surgeon to simplify the trays themselves. And these are based off of real things that have really happened, these real relationships where these people work together to do some amazing things.
Well, thank you, Stephen. I'm getting a lot of congratulatory notes here from Dawn and Margaret, Niyati, Alex Perry. So, I'm going to just leave for just another few seconds here in case anybody has any questions. If you want to open up your voice and ask Stephen directly, feel free. Otherwise, Stephen, if you don't mind just sharing, when is your book coming out? You never told us when, so let's find out.
Well, it's pre-ordered now through the publisher. It's about to go to print. Once it goes to print, we're expecting within the 10 days, you'll be able to order it and be able to get it in hand. So certainly within the next 2 weeks, but pretty much everything's done. I think there's several authors on here who understand the challenges, but pretty much everything is complete. So, but you can pre-order it through Warren Publishing, but it will be available through Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and the major distributors out there here within about 10 days, probably max, is where we're at.
So there you go, folks. You've heard it directly from Stephen. A big announcement for today. The Progressive Hospital coming in 10 days. Go figure. That's awesome. And by the way, I happen to have spoken with Stephen a lot about the process of getting a book composed. If you ever wonder, reach out to Stephen. He'll tell you how much work is involved and the amount of love and passion and creativity you got to put into it. It is a work of love, folks. So if you've never written a book before, talk to Stephen. He will get you the ins and outs of what it's like. So, okay, with that, we're almost at the half. Thank you so much for your participation wherever you are in the world. Stay safe, stay well, and look forward to seeing you at the next Passplot event. Take care, everybody.